Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about security. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, "Hi Frederick, I'm currently on my computer science degree and I want to pursue the path of cybersecurity. What is the common work environment and workflow in the cybersecurity department? Do cybersecurity specialists have to be on call every time if an attack or threat happens?" No, usually there is no such thing as on-call for cybersecurity specialists because, frankly, once the breach happens, you're basically fucked. And in most of the time, you don't actually know that it happens unless you're hit with like ransomware or some the more elaborate exploit. One example of where you would be on call, but that's really not your department per se. It's if, let's say, that someone were to do a denial of service attack against your systems and you're ill prepared to deal with that. Well, if that is what happens, then usually the operations people would be the ones who would have to deal with that, because identifying the attack is not really something that the security department is going to deal with, if you have one of those. So usually you can, this is very broad stroke now guys, but you can usually categorize security specialists into two buckets. You're either discovering problems with the company's software, or you're helping in preventing security breaches with the people who are working there, because those are the two main attack methods that exploiters or like malicious people use. Either you have a bug in the code somewhere or in your infrastructure, or you're leveraging like old outdated libraries, something like that. There's an exploit within your applications or something similar, right? And that's one way to get into your systems and do a lot of damage. Another way is to use social engineering and other sorts of methods. I mean, you don't even have to be IT related. It can be like the simplest thing you can do is literally to go into the head office and then just wait outside a security checkpoint and have someone let you in because you smiled at them. So there's many ways that you can quote unquote test the security of a company, but usually when companies hire security specialists, it's to do one or two things. Either you're there to review security protocol of the company. What that basically comes down to is that you need to teach people how to work in a more secure manner. You evaluate the different departments, you do risk assessment on information and set up like threat models and things like that. So for an example, if you work with a bank, well, they have certain needs versus a small company that maybe works with pharmaceuticals or something like that. And depending on the nature of the information and potential damages to the company and things of that nature, you will make suggestions and help, in many cases, implement those suggestions. It can be as simple as making sure that everybody uses multi-factor authentication on their accounts, or limiting how many people can access certain information because it's high-risk information, things like that. That's what you do. It's usually what the IT security consultant is primarily focused on. Then you have this more traditional one, which usually all the kids want to be, which is the pen tester or the hacker, white hat hacker. You can call them whatever you want. Pen tester is the professional term usually, but hacker is the popular term. So when you do that, on the other hand, it's more about, as I was saying, figuring out if there are issues within the system itself. These are the skills that usually are most relevant for, like, if you intend to become like a criminal, basically. This is what they do, basically. They have the technical skills to penetrate systems and so forth. And the idea here is very simple. The idea is that you take someone who has the same skills as someone who is going to do damage to your company. You have that person attempt similar sorts of things towards your systems to figure out if there are any holes. Because how would you test if something is bulletproof? Well, the easiest way is to hire somebody to shoot at you. And that's exactly what you do. That's what the pen tester in essence is. And if you want to learn more about the workflow and so forth, that's a whole. I mean, guys, there are so many things within the security space that you could be doing. But for the pen testing and hacking and so forth, I would suggest that you go and just look on YouTube or something like that if you're just getting started, because it's great that you're getting computer science degree, because that does weigh in. There is also a few other things depending on, once again, the nature of the role, because guys, you can go into high security work within software development as well. An example would be there's jobs for specific organizations where they have a need for people who basically programmers with highly specialized security profiles. The government would be an example of that. It's actually funny. I was looking at Rust jobs here in Sweden the other day, and I found that one of the best places apparently was to work for our security police, or the secret police here in Sweden, because they're developing. That job was specifically for Rust developers with the but the requirement was that you had pretty substantial experience within the security space, because as you can imagine, the secret police, their security protocols are like monstrous in comparison to most other organizations. Yeah, and there are other companies that have the same sorts of needs, right? So you can be a software developer as well within the security space, but usually, on average, the security work that you do in cybersecurity as I said, falls into one or two buckets. Either you're setting up protocols and work practices and being a very annoying person, unfortunately, towards a lot of people who are just quote unquote trying to do their job, and they're very lazy and they don't really like having to remember more than one password and all that stuff. Or you're testing the actual software for robustness, and there are plenty of videos for the tools and so forth that you can look at. I think my personal favorite one is the Cyber Mentor. I remember, if I recall correctly, his channel is really good if you want to learn all the things. He's a very dedicated and serious YouTuber who has a lot of good tips if you want to get started in that space. And sure, I can give you some tips and tricks on that, but at the end of the day, even though I find security and pen testing and so forth extremely interesting, it's not my primary focus. I can tell you about the tools that I use when I do this, but I'm not a professional pen tester, so I suggest that it's better for you to talk to somebody who does this at a professional level, because that's, I suspect, much better than having someone like myself who is a dabbler tell you that. So what I want you to take away from this is that usually when you're a cybersecurity specialist, you fall into one or two buckets. Either you are testing the software for security holes and then reporting them. It's very common for security personnel to work as consultants or something like that, where you do a threat assessment or a security assessment towards a company. You test, they give you an environment or they give you some specification. Hey, we want you to check for security holes in these environments or so forth. And then you go and you try your best to figure that out. And there are so many tools for this, guys. Your computer science degree will serve you pretty well here, but there are other things that you should know, and a few certifications that are very useful for you to get privately once you're done with your education, if you want to be a pen tester and test the software. The other type of security expert is more towards administrative work and supporting and education and things like that, and setting up the overall security protocols within a company. And as I said, that can be everything from setting up their infrastructure with multi-factor authentication, restricting what software can be installed on company computers, or being in meetings talking trying to get an evaluation of what information is where within the organization, who has access to what, or maybe even which regions are high risk to have people go into. So you might be there setting up key cards for access control into the actual the building itself. So security, guys, it's a monstrously big area. There's many ways that you could do work within it, but usually it falls into one of those two buckets. Either you're testing the software for security holes, or you are educating people and setting up work protocols so that the attacks don't happen in the first place. And as I mentioned, it's really rare that you need to be on call as a security expert, because usually by the time the attack happens, it's really not out of your hands to fix it. It's not like you can counter hack them per se, because usually when these sorts of exploits happen, you learn about it when it's too late. Have a great day.